Hello, friends. Welcome to Experience Data Talk, a show featuring data science leaders and technologists from around the world. As you know, each week we cover different topics important to our data and tech communities. And right now we're hosting a series of shows dedicated to how we're all dealing with COVID-19. My name is Mike Delgado, and this is episode number 117. Today we're chatting with author, podcaster, and remote working champion, Lisette Sutherland. I first learned about Lisette by watching her TED Talk on remote working, and then discovered her best-selling book entitled Work Together Anywhere, a handbook on working remotely successfully for individuals, teams, and managers. Lisette is also the director of Collaboration Superpowers and hosts workshops all over the world to help teams work better remotely. In today's podcast, Lisette talks with us about types of remote team maturity levels, ways to lead and facilitate a great virtual team meeting, steps for creating team agreements to improve remote communication, ways to reduce multitasking and disengagement in virtual meetings, and ways to prevent burnout in setting work-life boundaries during COVID-19. You know, Lisette has been training teams all over the world on how to effectively work remotely during these last 16 years. And she shares awesome advice in today's episode. I really enjoyed getting a chance to learn from her, and I think you will too. Here's our conversation. Lisette, thank you so much for being on Data Talk.
Oh, it's my honor. Thank you for inviting me.
We were just chatting a little bit before recording about things we're going through. I was wondering, maybe you can just share a little bit things that you're experiencing, things that you are feeling right now during COVID-19.
I have to say, for me personally, you know, it's my work schedule hasn't changed so much because although I'm traveling way less, which is I feel like it's a total blessing. Last year I traveled like 120 days out of the year. I visited like 47 cities and 20 something countries or something. It was like insanity. So this year is completely the opposite. So on the one hand, it feels very calm in some ways because I'm not moving in different places. So that feels good. On the other hand, there's enormous stress because there's this invisible thing out there. And we're recording at the very beginning of April. And, you know, it's really just starting to penetrate the rest of the world, this virus thing. So, yeah, for me personally, there's both. One is remote working is now like hot topic. It's like the hot topic right now because the entire world is going remote. So that's been insanity. It's been like a tsunami. So it's exciting on the one hand. And on the other hand, there's so much change. It's a little bit, it's difficult to get your bearings a little bit because things, you know, like the world is changing so fast. So every week I kind of sit down and I'm like looking back and I'm making notes every day of like, okay, this is what's happening today. You know, this is what I'm hearing from people that I'm talking to, and I'm just trying to assess. So I would just say, like, in terms of what I'm feeling, one is, well, it's exciting on the one hand in somebody in my position that's been so excited about remote work for so long and finally seeing it happen. I mean, this is not the way that I would want to see it happen, or I would advise people to do it. Like, I would never just say go remote overnight. Like, that's not the way to take your business remote. But on the one hand, it's exciting that this is happening. And on the other hand, there's enormous stress just because people are losing their jobs. People are getting sick. Nobody knows what's happening. Economies, we don't know what's going to happen to the economy. So it's like, how can you be, and how do you find your core in times where everything's moving? So I guess personally, I'm struggling with that a little bit. Like, how do you stay grounded when there's no solid ground to stand on?
You know, the work you've been doing, leading workshops all over the world, consulting at companies, helping remote workers with your writing, your book, Work Together Anywhere. You have been, you know, this has been your territory for a very long time. And now all of a sudden, like, everyone's running to you and saying, Lisette, like, how do I handle this? What about this? And I'm curious right now, as you're being hit with all these different messages and people are reaching out to you because of all the work you've done in the past around remote working, I'm curious about what are some of the themes or things you're seeing from people that is interesting about this particular COVID-19 situation?
One is you're seeing people jumping levels of maturity of remote working. So there was a recent interview that Sam Harris did with Matt Mullenweg, which was one of the best interviews I've heard on the future of work in a long time. So I highly recommend that to people. But Matt talks about that as that remote teams have a certain level of maturity. So you go from, you know, being able to be gone from the office for a day. You can still make some calls, but you know the files are going to be there tomorrow, so you might not, you know, you can go back tomorrow to do it. So there's that's level one, all the way to your team is better remote than it would be in person. That would be level 5, and there's sort of stages in between. So what I see people is people are going to, okay, now I have to work from home. So they're scrambling to get some sort of a home office set up. And the stage that people seem to be in now is one, we're recognizing that this is not going to now just be 1 or 2 weeks. This is now going to be 4 to 12 weeks. We don't know. So I've been telling people, or I've been talking to people about, it's time to get comfortable where you are. And it's time to invest in some good equipment in terms of being able to connect with your team. So, get a headset and get a webcam and get some good lighting, and just think about, like, what do you need to be productive? So there's that. And then there's another level in which people are starting to, after people started being like, oh yeah, I really could do something about my office equipment. Like, I need that standing desk all of a sudden because there's no way you can't sit all day. There's that. And then now people are starting to realize, I'm in video meetings all day long, like back-to-back video meetings. That seems to be the next thing that people are just like, what? This is not going to work. Like, I'm totally exhausted by video meetings. I remember this phase. So the thing that people are struggling now is, how do you go from synchronous, like hanging out, making decisions together online, discussions online, how do you take some of that and make it asynchronous? So, because online meetings are different than in-person meetings, and they should be treated differently than in-person meetings. So for example, like, I would never come to an online meeting with a presentation and just talk for 20 minutes and present. Like, why would you not just record yourself, send that to your colleagues before the meeting starts, let them watch it on their own time, and then use your online time for discussions or decision making? So people are starting to realize that that meeting is not necessarily necessary, and how can you take portions of the meeting asynchronous so that you're not in video conference calls all day long? Because first of all, setting up your video conference calls back to back, having these 1 hour meetings, I'm already, my number one tip is cut your meetings in half wherever possible, or at least 45 minutes so that you give yourself a 15-minute break. And one of the things I learned from interviewing NASA way back in the beginning, I mean, I think they were like interview number 4 way back in 2015 or something, but they said that when they do video calls, they have a maximum amount of time of 45 minutes before they take a 5 to 10 minute break. And so that's sort of where I'm seeing people at now. It's like, okay, we can't be synchronous all the time. We've got to design it differently. Otherwise, we're going to go crazy like this. So that's sort of where I'm seeing that's where people are right now.
That's fascinating. The NASA, the way that they're handling their meetings do you notice like 40 minutes is kind of like the kind of a breaking point? Like, we need to take a break around this point.
Yes, definitely 45 minutes. And in fact, I've taught that in my workshop for years. The sessions in my workshop are 90 minutes each. And after 45 minutes, you can just feel, I mean, if you're watching people on the screen, you can feel there's a decrease in engagement. And it's because staring at the screen and talking at it for so long, it's really fatiguing, much more so than if you were like typing a document or working in flow. There's something about being online with other people and like in this format where we're facing the camera that tends to be more exhausting. So yeah, for me, it's about 45 minutes. I don't have science behind that, but that's what NASA does. So I just did what NASA did because I figured they probably have some science behind what they're doing. I'm sure that I need to do, but also it feels better. I mean, when people come back from the breaks in my workshops, there's a definite increase in engagement and motivation to continue.
Lisette, not everyone even likes being on video, and I think that's something that's hard during this transition.
Yeah,
and something I'm also trying to work on as I chat with my friends, my colleagues at work. Like, I like the FaceTiming. Like, I'm like, hey, let's FaceTime, let's talk. But I'm realizing that not everyone like just wants to jump on a FaceTime or do a video chat. They'd rather can we just email right now? Today I'm really busy. Or sometimes can we just text or phone call? I don't want to go on video. Can you talk about like how we can all be sensitive to this video chat kind of life that we're living right now?
Yeah, there's valid reasons on both sides of the aisle in terms of, some people, they don't like to see themselves on video. It's very distracting for them. And I would say for those people, most tools have a feature where you can hide your self view. So others can see you, but you don't have to see yourself. So for those people, I would say, okay, do that. I would, by and large, most people don't like turning their cameras on in meetings because they want to multitask without others knowing. So that is really one of the number one reasons. And I would just say for meetings like that, no wonder online meetings are such hell. right? They're like levels of Dante's Inferno. You just go deeper into the Inferno. Right. And it's true. And it's because you've got unengaged participants, people that aren't paying attention. I mean, we've all seen the videos of like, somebody asking Mike a question and Mike's like doing something else and he's got a recording or something like, oh, sorry, I was on mute. Can you repeat the question? So I would say by and large, multitasking is an issue, which is why we have to design our online meetings differently. Not everybody has to be there. And why don't we just make them shorter and different? There's all kinds of design issues that come up. But in terms of video, we all have to show up at the office as ourselves. And I would say on video, if your team is having trouble with camaraderie or trust or just miscommunication issues, the number one thing that you can do to help that is to turn the video on. So yes, I would say in some circumstances, maybe you've just got back from running, or like one woman in my workshop, she had just had eye surgery or something. So yeah, of course, you don't want to be like with a bruised eyes on video. Like there's all kinds of reasons why you wouldn't want to do it. But I would say by and large, for the majority of meetings and the majority of interactions, video is going to help much more than it's going to hurt. So it's controversial, but I would say for the most part, some people just want to be in their casual clothes. And for those, I would say, put on a decent shirt, and a scarf can even hide the fact that you're wearing pajamas. But by all means, we're working remote. That's one of the benefits is you get to stay in your sweatpants all day if you want to. That's fine, do that. But like put on a reasonable shirt. Everybody's got one. So it doesn't take that much. So in terms of like, if people are like, I'm in my casual clothes, I'm like, come on, like put on a scarf, you can do it. So there's very little excuse. And for the people that are multitasking, I feel like that's not an excuse. That's just poor meeting practice. And there's and bandwidth issues can be, but even with bandwidth issues, I would say like turning the video on for the first 5 minutes and the last 5 minutes just to say hello and goodbye can be even better than not turning it on at all. So yeah, there's, everybody's got an excuse, but the thing is, science shows that our teams connect easier, and camaraderie and trust is built faster when we can see each other. So it just depends on what you're struggling with, where you're going to put your priorities. But yeah, by and large, turn the videos on. And Zoom has great features like the virtual backgrounds, so that you can just put up the virtual background, nobody has to see. Or what I've got here is I've got my room divider up.
I like that.
So it just sort of like takes away all the distracting things, and plus I've got a window behind me, so I've got that witness protection program thing going on if I don't put something in between. So it's like there's things that you can do in the background that makes it a little bit better. So there's all kinds of excuses for not turning the video on, and I'd say 90% of the time they're not valid enough to not do it. So I'm saying I'm a really big proponent of video. I'm a huge proponent of it.
Yeah, it's so funny because I have probably the most distracting background right now. I have my son's stuffed animals, Pokemon,
awesome.
creatures, Pusheen, hanging out here. I have to figure out my background, but
totally
this is like the new normal is we're in our own living spaces, and sometimes that can be another reason why people don't want to share out video.
Absolutely. And that's what I'd say, listen, if you don't want to share your personal space, fair enough. A lot of people want to really, like I know in France, the culture in France is work and personal are very separate and should be kept that way. And that is part of the culture. So yes, valid. But then get yourself a room divider or a virtual background or something that would hide it.
Yeah.
For sure. But there's plenty. I mean, there's so many great things, with cards, you can express, should we record this? And there's all, like, oh, you're on mute, so the visual aspect of being able to work together visually is not just so that we can see each other. It's because there's so many ways we can express ourselves also. So yeah, I just think that there's a solution to every excuse.
I love those cards. Where do you get those cards?
Oh, I make them. So I make these decks I have a whole deck, and I'll show people a tip. I've got this card. I'm a gamer. Also, I like to play games. So I've got this fun card holder here that lets people.
Awesome. Okay. That is awesome.
They're on my website. So.
Okay, great. I will make sure that we link out to that on our blog. That is fantastic. I love that.
People can just use sticky notes too, right? Like there's no reason why you can't just put up a sticky note that says I can't.
That's really good. I mean, because that's something that's hard when you're on a video call with a bunch of people is that nonverbal work that's happening, and also like you're on mute or you are over talking. Like that's one of the problems I'm noticing lately is the over talking, because we're all trying to contribute. Someone asks a question and all of a sudden 3 other people chime in at the same time.
I've got a card for that too. Oh, the over talking. I was thinking of a different over talker when you were talking about that. So I was thinking about the person in the meeting that goes on and on and on and doesn't seem to stop. So I've got a card for that too. It's the elbow card, and it stands for enough, let's move on. And so this is like because sometimes that talker that goes on and on, they don't really know they're going on and on sometimes. So sometimes it's good to just get like, I understand, I'm ready to go on to the next thing. So
I love
it's
that.
lifesaver for in-person and online meetings.
That's really, really good. So, because you've been doing these types of meetings for a really long time, do you have advice for those who are hosting the meeting to help reduce the crosstalk? That's probably the better term. Because what I'm noticing is I'll be on a video call with a lot of people, and a question will go out from a leader, and all of a sudden 2 or 3 people will chime in at once, and then the leader has to then go, okay, you talk first, and then sometimes there could be a little bit of confusion there. And I'm kind of
Yeah.
curious about, as you've hosted lots of different group calls and meetings, how do you kind of moderate those video call discussions?
One is, I think it's important to use a tool where you can see everybody in the meeting at once. So, there's a lot of tools where you can just see like a few icons at the bottom, and then the person who's speaking, it's big. I really prefer systems like in Zoom, where you can see the gallery view, see everybody at once. And I think that can help because you can see when somebody wants to speak then, like you can see that they're taking a breath or they're raising their hand, like old fashioned, back in school. It seems to be universal. Like everybody in the world understands I want to speak. Or, you can hold up a card saying, I'd like to speak, I have a point to make. But I would say that's also there's some facilitation techniques for doing that. One is when you ask a question into the group, it's good to actually call on somebody to answer it. It's also okay for them to pass, right? Like it shouldn't, you're not putting somebody on the spot. So they can say like, oh, I'm not ready yet, pass the next person. But I would say instead of asking a question into the full group, you may want to direct it at a specific person. So being able to see everybody, facilitating, just directing at a certain person. But the thing is that even when we're together in person, you're going to get people talking over each other. And with video, I think it really just needs to either be facilitated well by somebody, or you have to establish etiquettes like, hey, if we ask a question, raise your hand and go. So, that is the downside of video calls, is that the conversation isn't as fluid in that respect, because you can't talk over each other, whereas you can do that in person. But I would also say, it has its upsides, which is in person, usually it's the loudest person or the one that just doesn't stop that gets their voice heard. And so you can equalize that a little bit more on video, and to have facilitators call on people or raising your hands like, I want to speak next, using the chat to make your point instead of talking over somebody. So those are all techniques, but yeah, it's hard. It's not the simplest thing.
Do you have advice for those of us who might be the talkers and maybe not super self-aware that we're talking a little bit too much?
One is ask people to use Elmo so that that will give you a visual indicator. Something that other facilitators have done, or even if you're worried about it as a talker, I sometimes will make a list of everybody. I have a piece of paper and I have a list of everybody that's there, and I will mark when somebody has spoken. So I'll put on a piece of paper like, okay, they spoke, and then I can kind of visually see who's not speaking. And I might be able to say like, okay, Sean, I haven't heard from you yet. Do you have something that you want to say on this? So I would say if you're really worried about it, first of all, if you're worried about it, you're probably not talking too much because you have a level of self-awareness there. You're questioning it to begin with. So there's some self-awareness there. But for the others, I would just use a simple technique of just marking when others are speaking and asking for feedback.
As many of us are working remotely for the very first time, what advice do you have for trying to figure out the best ways to collaborate, best ways to stay productive while we're home?
Yeah, it's one, be easy on yourself, because these are weird days. This is not normal. And even, I've worked from home for over 10 years now, and even I am struggling with productivity right now. It's just hard not to watch the news or to talk to friends or like, how's the family doing, So one, be gentle on yourself. Two is now that we're in these spaces, there's a couple of things we have to do. One, we have to figure out what what do we need in order to be productive? Like, what does our most ideal workspace look like? And then start to invest in the infrastructure of making yourself comfortable. So, like a good headset, you don't have to, I mean, these were a gift from my wealthy sister. So you don't have to get the Bose QC35s, which is like a super fancy headset, but like, a reasonable headset that's comfortable will work just fine. And a reasonable camera is, so start putting infrastructure in place. And I would think like, a comfortable chair is a good investment, or a stand desk or something, where an extra monitor, like now that we're going to be here for another 4 to 12 weeks, like it's time to invest in some decent equipment if you can. So there's that. So then the other is you've really got to put your own boundaries in place. And I think that's the number one thing that people struggle with when going remote first is we tend to overwork instead of underwork, and burnout is far more prevalent than laziness in that sense. And so that's the other place that I would tell people to really pay attention. Like, what are some boundaries that you can do? So for me, for instance, my working hours are between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. And that doesn't mean I'm working 12 hours a day. It means that, those are within those hours is when I do my work. But at 9 p.m., I shut the door, and then that's it. I don't check emails, and, I don't look at anything work related, because you need the in-between time. You really do need to shut down more than just a good night's sleep. Your brain has to be able to wander a bit and to focus on other things. So you really have to put boundaries in place for yourself. And it sounds really easy, and I make the analogy with weight loss. Like, we all know the formula: eat less and move more. But anybody that's tried to lose weight knows that it's not that easy. It's super hard, actually. And to keep that up over time is excruciating. So it's the same with our boundaries. I mean, it's easy enough to say, like, okay, after 9 o'clock, I don't check my emails. But man, if I've been waiting on an email all day and it's 10:30 and I'm still, I'm like, oh, I wonder if the email came in. Like, I'm totally checking. So it's incredibly difficult to do that. And there's this awesome cartoon, The Oatmeal, that has
I love
a
the cartoon.
Yeah, it's so, and they have this one that's called, the why working from home is both awesome and horrible. And it's so true, because it's awesome because we have ultimate freedom, right? We have the freedom to design a workspace and a lifestyle around anything that we want. If you can be 100% remote, you could be a digital nomad, or you could be training for a triathlon. You could, whatever it is you want to do, you can design your lifestyle. But the thing is, it's also horrible at the same time, because we have ultimate freedom, which means there are no boundaries anywhere, and we have to put those in place for ourselves. Whereas before, we went to the office, and the boundary was the office walls, and you left at 5 or 6 or whenever people leave, and then you go home. Well, we don't have that anymore. So you have to make it for yourself. And so that's why I say it's both awesome and horrible, because it's really hard. So, it's like easy to give advice, like, yeah, figure out what you need to be productive and get that, and then put some boundaries in place and you're good to go. But like, I would say, do not underestimate how difficult those easy things are for productivity.
Go ahead.
I'm just going to give a bad example of like for me, I am like, you're a morning person. You were telling me earlier, like, and that you wake up at 4. Like, for me, if I wake up at 4, I'm like, oh yeah, I can still go back to bed. Like, I'm totally, like, it's still middle of the night for me. So I really have a hard time getting started in the morning. So what I do for myself is I do the Pomodoro time boxing. 25 minutes. I set the timer. I just start on the first task, and I power through the 25 minutes, and then I give myself a 5-minute break and, like, woo, reward. And then I do another Pomodoro, and by the second or third one, I'm in flow. So that's what I need to. Otherwise, I just sit here and just kind of do random stuff. So I actually have to force myself into flow in the morning. Other people, my husband, he just gets started. I mean, he's out of bed, showered, and off to work before I've even got my eyes open. So there, it's a different style. So you really do have to figure out what works for you, and then put systems in place. And then I would just, my motto is begin again, because every time I fall off the wagon, I begin again. Like, okay, like, I check my email. Okay, tomorrow I'm not going to do it. Like, you just have to start. You just keep trying. Don't get discouraged if possible.
I never heard of the Pomodoro method.
Oh, yeah, it's like it's famous for their tomato timer. They have some sort of I don't know why it's Pomodoro tomatoes. I can't remember the thing, but it's just working for 25-minute time blocks, taking a 5-minute break, and then another 25-minute time block, and then you take a 10-minute break. So they just say, 25 minutes, you should be able to focus on one thing for 25 minutes. Usually everybody's attention span's that long, and then a break. And that's to keep people from from one like me, where I'm just like looking at things in the morning and I kind of don't know where to start, or for people that once you sit down at the computer, it's hours later before you look up again. So that 5 minute break is also like, I've got some kettlebells in my room so I can do some squats
Nice.
or some, just something to get the blood flowing. Some, I like plank in between or just do something, to get the blood flowing. Because right now, a lot of people can't go outside. There are some countries that are on total lockdown, which means that we're not moving very much at all. So I would just say, like, get some, there's a lot you can do with your own body weight. There's a lot you can do. You don't have to invest in any sort of equipment at all. Just go on YouTube. Fitness Blender is my favorite YouTube fitness account. You can do. They have 100 billion videos on all the kinds of things you can do with your own body weight, and seem like lovely people. So yeah, the hard part is just getting the discipline for yourself. I think everybody struggles there.
What you're saying about having that routine is super important. Like figuring out what energizes you, what time of the day to get working, how to set up your time so you're productive, kind of like your method of work for 25 minutes, focus, take a break 5 minutes, get back to work. Like whatever system is going to work best for you. That's the thing that we all have to figure out.
Yeah. And the agreements we have to make with our families, right? I mean, we're all in the house now. That's really different than if you're used to everybody going off to work and school and then you're in the house. That's really different when everybody's home. So, there's like, people are talking about bandwidth issues now, where if your kids are watching Netflix and playing World of Warcraft and somebody else is on a conference call, like, you've got to have enough bandwidth to suit everybody. And with that, I would say you've got to make agreements with your family in terms of who's doing what and when. Maybe there's some, the schedule for who's using what room. There's some fun apps that have come out in the last couple of weeks for like scheduling rooms in your house, which is interesting. But then it's also in terms of bandwidth usage. You want to make sure that if you're on an important video conference call, that your kids aren't playing, Minecraft or watching Netflix at the same time, kind of thing. So there's all kinds of things to think about now. And it's not normal. Like, this is not normal working from home. This is not what it's like. People are getting a weird taste right now.
Yeah, that's so true. You're right, because it's not normal that everyone's home, because right now schools are closed, at least
Right.
where we're at. So all our kids are home. My wife's here. I mean, we're all here, and we're kind of like, okay, I'm going to be in this room to do this task, and I need to be alone for the next hour. I'm telling my kids, like, I'm sorry, like, this is not normal for daddy to like have to be away, and I can't be there for you right now.
Well, yeah, and try telling your 4-year-old that you need a 1 hour power hour. Like, they have no idea what that means, right? Like, no, it's I don't even have kids, but I'm hanging out with my niece and nephew on video, and I'm just seeing, like, oh my God, what my sister-in-law and my sister are going through right now is it's a lot. It's heavy. So that's why I say to people, be easy on yourself. These are not normal days. Like, even if you had the perfect home setup, like, I have the perfect home setup. I have my own office, like, with a door that closes. I've worked here for ages, so I've got everything set up just the way I like it. But that's unusual. And even I'm feeling significant stress. And my husband's home all the time now, and that's also weird for us. And we're in a luxurious situation. Like, we've each got our own office. We don't have any kids, and even we are feeling stressed and have had to make agreements together. So if you've got kids, just give yourself a break.
Also, something you mentioned was about your setup and about having a good chair.
Yeah. I keep telling people, make yourself comfortable. I mean, yes, it's an investment, except, my husband keeps saying camping's fun, but not forever. Like, you want it. Camping is okay. You want to be camped out in your house right now because we have to be, but at some point the comfort level starts to become really important. And if you're trying to get work done, I would say, you have the resources, invest, because you think it's small, like a good headset. You think it's a small investment, but I'm telling you, the quality of the call that happens when everybody's got a decent headset is so much better than when it doesn't happen, that it's worth the $50. Yeah.
It's also hard, Lisette, is just with everything happening in the world, like, I want to go to my phone and look at the news all the time, like getting the latest updates. And that can be a huge distraction and emotionally difficult.
That's where the self-discipline comes in. I have the same issue. I mean, we're watching a natural disaster happen slowly in real time. And we're a completely interconnected world now. So we're getting news. It used to be you got the news once a day in a newspaper format. Like, and now it's like by the minute, the president breathes and we all know about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's highly addicting. And I would say treat it like any addiction and really give yourself a time and a place for certain things. So, like make an agreement with yourself, like the news happens, like I read my news in the morning and then in the evening, and in between, I really try not to check it because it throws me off. Like something, and if something's really big, you're going to hear about it anyway, because it'll just be on any feed, if you're online, you're going to hear about it anyway. So that's really it's so difficult because the name of the game is discipline right now. You've really got to feed what's going to work for you, what's going to help you be productive, and you can't stress too much. You can take care of yourself and those around you, and we should be focused on that for the most part. And then the news and stuff, like keep that at a minimum. It's important, but there's like a difference between being informed and being obsessed. And it's a dance, and I struggle with it too. I don't know if that I'm the best person to give advice, but what I've been doing is just putting buckets of time for myself. Like, okay, in the morning is when I read the news, and in the evening is when I read the news, and in between, I just need to do other things because it's so scary right now.
I like how you talked about discipline and setting these routines, making sure that we are taking care of ourselves with, just even with the news and how we're consuming it. I think right now, a lot of us, especially for those who are newly working at home, and for my company, it's been the last 2.5 weeks where we're all working from home now. I'm noticing that there is a lot of collaboration happening. Like we're all like rallying together. We're sending emails. We're over communicating, which I think is a really good thing right now. But one of my concerns is what happens a month from now as we're all kind of settling into this new normal. And let's just say that we continue to work from home in this situation for the next 3 to 4 months. And the early, what I'm saying? And the early
Yeah.
kind of collaboration that's happening begins to not be as exciting anymore. The video calls aren't as exciting anymore because it becomes normal. And I'm just kind of curious, like, as you have been leading others through working remotely, I'm kind of interested in, like, what are the things that are initially exciting in the beginning and then become like, oh, that's kind of a boring activity now, and I'm not as excited to do that thing anymore?
Yeah, that's a difficult question, I find, because there are so many things happening in the world of work right now in terms of going remote. There's new apps being developed every day. There's games. There's, people are playing board games online. So it's hard for me to imagine a time where it becomes because for years it hasn't been. There's, virtual reality is making a huge splash. The Oculus Quest is finally affordable and amazing for anybody that's tried it. It's just stunning what's possible at the moment. There's so much innovation happening. It's hard to imagine even being bored at this point of what's going on. I would say it's important, though, that we keep ourselves and those close to us inspired. So one of the things that I've been focused on in terms of helping others during the Corona time is there's a million tips for how to work from home right now on the internet. Like everybody is suddenly a remote working expert, and so I've decided to not go that route, because I feel like if you want to learn the basics, that's good. Just go read any blog post from any so-called expert. What I am really focused on right now is finding the remote teams that are doing great things. People who are like the R-Loop team. They built a Hyperloop pod for the SpaceX Hyperloop competition. And the Hyperloop is a super fast transportation system that basically, through a use of a gravity tube, you get shot through this tube, but it can make the commute between San Francisco and Los Angeles, takes it from 7 hours to 30 minutes. It's just what? It's Elon Musk's project starting 5 years ago. He's been working on this for years. But so they entered this competition, And it was a guy on Reddit who just posted in a subforum on Reddit, hey, I'm interested in joining SpaceX competition. Is there anybody out there who's interested with me? 1 year later, he has a group of 400 remote volunteers who have never met each other, and they came in finalists in the competition. And to me, I think, like, it's mind-blowing. What else could we do if we get the right people working together? And so for me, like, the thought of this becoming boring it's just not even possible, because what this way of working opens up, or has the potential of opening up, is totally awesome. And so some of the things that we're seeing right now is, museums are giving virtual tours. You can actually beam in via robot and drive yourself around museums in France, all over the world, actually. Like the Winchester Mystery House is giving virtual tours. I'm not sure how they're doing it.
Oh.
So you can actually go on a virtual tour of the Winchester Mystery House, which is totally cool. There's a Google Chrome plugin now where you can actually watch movies together on Netflix. So like through a plugin, so you can start it and pause it on time and chat in between and like hang out. So my focus is on what are the awesome things that people are doing while we're remote, and what are the great things that remote teams are doing and accomplishing because they're remote. So I'm trying, I can't imagine getting bored with this, because the possibilities that it opens up is just it's too big. It's too exciting. I think the challenge is putting our focus on that and not seeing, like, there's so much doom and gloom right now. And man, there are people losing their jobs. There's companies going out of business. Like, there is a lot of doom and gloom to focus on, but I just feel like we have no choice but to filter through and try to direct the world into a new and better reality if possible. And certainly many things cannot be replicated online at the moment. I mean, there's nothing like hanging out over a giant bowl of nachos with a pint of beer with your friends, in a bar with sticky floors, and like, there's just nothing better. There's nothing better than those nights. But I've always said, like, what happens when you can't do that? What's the next best thing? And so we're in a situation now where I just think we got to figure out what else can we do? So I don't know if that's a good answer to the question.
I love that. I love that answer. And I love that example you gave, the SpaceX competition, and a group of 400 people all working virtually together on this project. What a beautiful collaboration. That is super cool.
Must have been awesome. I mean, it must have been, this is just people volunteering their time. It's just like, to me, that's even more incredible, because companies will bring people together and pay them to do something. This is a group of people that are doing something highly technical, very complicated, as volunteers from like in their spare time. Like, to me, I just think, like, for me, I have hope in humanity just based on that alone. It's like,
that is so cool. Have you noticed, as you've been studying this for such a long time and looking at all these high-performing remote teams, have you noticed anything about those people that you think is a reason why they're successful?
There's some generalizations you can make in terms of what I'm seeing. One is people are tech savvy. So, they're not afraid. It's not that the tech is very hard, but you can't be afraid of it. And people are at different levels. Like my sister-in-law called the other day because she had a tech problem. She couldn't figure out how to make find the apostrophe. Like, she's a complete newbie. So, and my neighbor who was 65 came over to ask how to use the mouse. Because he'd never seen a mouse before, and for somebody who's never seen a mouse before, you can imagine, like, it's not. You're like, what do you do with it? He's had no idea.
Right, totally.
So trying to explain to him what Control C and Control V mean.
Right.
He's especially if you're in another country, like he's Dutch, and he's just like, what do you Control C? Like, what, you just have to memorize that stuff at some point. So one is people are tech savvy. The other is they're fairly disciplined with their time. And that they value, I think one of the things that they value the most is freedom. They want the freedom to work where they're most productive. They want the freedom to design their lifestyles. Like, that is what's most important to them. You have to want it. If you don't want, I mean, it's just like anything. If you're not interested, if this is not your thing, then you're not going to try very hard to make it work. But the thing is if you want it, if you want that freedom, like digital nomad, I'm not a digital nomad. It's not my thing. I'm rooted in one place. I like my home office to be my home base. But they want to make this happen. And one of the arguments that people made for why people do so well with remote work is because they're emotionally invested in the reasons why they're doing it. They're doing it to spend more time with their family or to avoid the commute. So there's a real emotional investment there in terms of why. So if you don't have that, it's not going to work, just like with anything. Like if you don't want to learn how to dance, you're not going to learn how to dance. And it's the same. If you don't want to learn how to work remote, it'll fail. There's so many failure points. You have to really want to make it work. Because if you're on the road and you're trying to work remotely, you're dealing with bad internet connections, schedules that are, like the bus doesn't come, so then you're 3 hours delayed and you're not going to make that meeting you were planning on making, or the Airbnb is not what you expected it to be, or the hotel Wi-Fi is bad, or, you got to have a sense of humor about it. Otherwise, you'll just go crazy. You'll just go crazy. And
totally.
I say that, and I'm like, I spent 130 days on the road last year, and I can tell you I did not have a sense of humor for a lot of that. It's like, I kept telling myself like, travel, like just go with it. But at some point, you're done with it. You're done with that bad situation. So yeah, it's all easier said than done.
Can you talk a little bit about the workshops you've led?
The main one that I've done is called the Work Together Anywhere workshop. It was modeled after the book. And what they are is it's 4 90-minute sessions, and we go through 4 different topics using different tools for each session, because I like to highlight what can the tool do to help that. So in the first session, we talk about how to avoid basic misunderstandings with the team by just creating team agreements together. And then we move on to diving deeply into how to facilitate and design great online meetings, because those are like the worst, right? Everybody hates online meetings. And then we talk about how do we, beyond meetings, how do you collaborate online? Like, what do you do? Like, if you're actually going to work together online, not just in a meeting, what does that mean and what do you do? And in the last session, we talk about feedback and appreciation, because that's often, those loops are often not in place, especially appreciation. That seems to be one where everybody's like, oh, I've said thank you. And I'm like, no, that's not how you show appreciation necessarily. There's way other, you could, for instance, you can send a pizza almost anywhere in the world. So if you notice your team is working really hard, then send a pizza, because it's great for every meal, right? Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So it's easy to get delivered. It's always appreciated. Even if they don't like pizza, they'll appreciate the gesture. So things like that, you can do simple stuff. So that's the 4 sections of the workshop. And we usually have about 10 to 12 participants in each one, and they're highly interactive. So a lot of people have often thought that they're like webinars, but it's completely not a webinar. We have breakout groups and whiteboards, and we're drawing, and we have exercises and worksheets and all kinds of stuff. So it's highly interactive. And for me, they're a lot of fun. I hope that my participants are also having fun. I suspect that they are, because people come back. So
that's so cool. I love that. I love the way you've organized it. And you said I forgot what you said, the first session, you kind of talk a little bit about kind of relationships and conflict. Is that right?
Team agreements.
Team agreement.
With each other. Yeah. So generally, when we're in the office, we can see and hear what people are doing. So we generally know what they're doing. Like, we know where the files are kept. Everybody takes lunch at the same time, or, so there's a lot that's implicit at the office. But when we go remote, we don't have any of those visual or auditory cues. So we have to make stuff explicit. And what I tell people is, like, a very simple team agreement might be, how are we going to communicate with each other, and which tools are we going to use? Because some people are phone people, some people are email people, some people like instant message. And there's different ways of using tools. And so you want to kind of come to an agreement with your team on which tools you're going to use, first of all, because there's a million out there on the market. Everybody's got their own preferences. So you got to agree on what you guys are going to use. It doesn't have to be forever, but like for right now, what are we going to use? And then you have to agree on how you're going to communicate with each other. And the example I always give is, you would never email the fire department if your house were on fire, right? Like, you need a different form of communication for that, something faster. And it's the same with something on your team. Like, if there's something super urgent, you don't send an email, like you call, or something else that's faster. So you have to discuss with your team what you're going to do. And also you might want to discuss, like, are there core hours that we need to be together? Are there core working hours, or does it matter? Like, if you wanted to do your work from 10 to 12 at night, does it matter? In some cases it does, in some cases it doesn't. Or response times. Like, some people feel like 24 hours, if I respond to your email in 24 hours, that's good. Whereas other people are thinking like, it's been 2 hours and you haven't responded. So you want to just define for your team what is normal behavior. So I would say that's a team agreement. And you brought up relationship and conflicts, and I would say that a team agreement is like your prenuptial agreement in some ways, which is, you want to define how you deal with conflict before it happens, so that there's protocols in place for what you do when it happens. Because conflict on any team is normal and healthy, but on remote teams, man, we get passive quickly, because sometimes the thing is so small that saying something about it almost makes it into a bigger issue than it actually is. And so you need to find ways of, how do you blow steam? How do you tell somebody like, man, that just annoyed me. It doesn't have to go beyond this. I just need you to know, like, that was annoying. I'm annoyed. I don't know what it is. You have to find a way, because when you're in person, you can see it on somebody's face.
Yeah.
And that's important. It's important to know, like, oh, I rubbed them the wrong way. Okay, I'm gonna follow up on that. But remote, you have no idea. In your team agreement, you're gonna want to put some sort of feedback loop in place. How often are we gonna do retrospectives? Are we gonna, when are we going to talk? How do we handle it if you're annoyed? So just outlining, because there's so many misunderstandings, that just getting the basics on paper somewhere, or whatever, wiki or wherever you start, just getting the basics down is going to take you a long way.
That is such a smart strategy. I love you call it like the prenuptial agreement, to help everyone like level set on what's kind of expected. And especially when you said about the email and the response times, like that's huge, because right now we're getting like hundreds of emails a day. It's ridiculous. And I was even talking to my boss the other day about, like, do we need to put certain emojis in our subject lines to know, like, green, red, yellow, like prioritizing my emails, because it's kind of ridiculous right now.
And it seems like a good conversation to have with the team, or like, it's good that you went to the boss. Like, how do I prioritize right now? Because I'm having the same issue as you, especially in the last 3 weeks. I'm actually getting so many emails, I can't even open them all in one day. Like, there's just, every time it's just like, it's like a fire hose. I've never experienced anything like it. But what do you do? Like, how do I respond to the most important thing? How do you define important at that point? Same with a team email, and I would say, as remote teams mature, you're going to move away from email, and you're going to move into some sort of a group chat system like Slack or Teams or something like that, because you need to get more efficient. And email is, I love email, but it's not efficient, not when you're working with a group of people. So you need to become more transparent and more instant message like, or have those channels available for that. So there's sort of the sophistication that grows, a maturity that grows.
For those that want to keep up with you, can you tell them a little bit about your book and also your website where they can follow your work?
Yeah, everything. Yeah, everything's at collaborationsuperpowers.com. The book as well. I've got it here. It's called Work Together Anywhere. And you can see it's like a real book. Sometimes people advertise online, like you get a pamphlet in the mail. Like, no, it's for real. It's 400 pages. It's a real book. and yeah, it's available on Amazon. I will say that actually in the next few days, I have to take it online. So I don't know when this is if this is live now or people are hearing it soon, but I would say if you're going to get it, now is the time, because it's being republished by a major publisher. Excited. I can't say who. We're still, thank you. Yeah, we're signing contracts and everything, but I have to take it off the market for a couple of weeks, but then it'll be republished in, I don't know how many weeks, but they want it to be out as fast as possible, of course. So, but get it now. You've got the original. It's still on while
awesome.
While it's here.
I love paperbacks. I love going through, underlining, writing in the margin.
Totally.
That's my thing.
Totally. Yeah. Some people find it blasphemous, but I'm with you. I write all over them. I just I like, it's interesting because people always say like, oh, what to-do list or what to-do app do you use? And I'm like, I'm a tool junkie, right? I'm a tool junkie, but I still use like this old-fashioned.
Yes.
This is the Michael Hyatt Full Focus Planner. I'm in love with this thing, and it's so inefficient. I have to bring it everywhere I go. But here's the thing: it works for me, and so that's why I always tell people the tools. Like, the right tool is the tool that works for you. That there's no one right tool. So just paper, tactile. Don't forget about that in the digital age.
It's funny. My favorite tool is probably a backpack, because usually when I'm before COVID, I'd be out and about, and I have my little journal, the book that I'm currently reading, all my pens. So that way, my fun thing would be going to like a coffee shop and just getting my stuff out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like it's like a house on your back. It's
Yeah.
like all the mini stuff. Yeah. I have the same, like my external monitor. I have like a travel monitor and, so I have to go and set up. Yeah. I
My
missed,
snacks are in there. My laptop, everything's in there in my backpack.
I'm missing working in coffee shops right now. I never thought I would miss that as much as I do, but I gotta say, I hope we get through this COVID thing as fast as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Because as great as the remote world is, there's still something awesome about hanging out together in a
Totally.
nice place. Yeah.
Lisette, before we go, any last minute tips for all these people like myself who are just transitioning to being a remote worker?
Invest in your equipment and get yourself trained. It's not a plug for workshops at all, but there's millions of trainings out there. You can find good. You'll know when they're good. I think they usually look quality or not. But don't. Everybody has this idea for remote working, like you're laying on the beach and your laptop's on your lap with an umbrella drink. Like like how hard can it be? And I think what people are seeing now is it's actually not as easy as all those horrible stock photos make it out to be. If anybody's ever tried working from a beach, you know that it's totally impossible. Like you have sun in your screen, sand in your keyboard. Like it is not where you want to be doing your best work. And it's hot. The laptop is hot on your lap. Like so these photos, I'm just like, who are these people working? Anyway, they're not really working on the beach. So I would say it's not as easy as it looks. And there's all kinds of subtleties in there that actually, it's good to just train yourself a little bit on what those are and how you can take things to the next level, because where you want to be is in a company that is better remote than they are in person in some ways, because then both parties have the ultimate freedom. We have the ultimate freedom to do whatever we want, which is awesome. And then companies have a stronger and more connected workforce because it doesn't matter where we are. So, I would say like the payoff is pretty big when we get it right. So maybe now is the time to invest in it since we have to.
I'm cracking up, Lisette, because I'm thinking about all those Instagram photos of like the work from home, like at the beach.
It's like every time I see it, I'm like, no way. There's no way. Like if you've ever tried it, there's no way.
Laptop out just to my backyard. It doesn't work.
Right.
It's like the sun's there. It's just not going to work.
Yeah, and if you think about sand and all those stock photos, I know what they're trying to convey, but it's just not like that. Like, your pajamas on the couch. That's more realistic.
Like yeah. Well, Lisette, thank you so much for being on Data Talk.
Thank you. It's been my honor.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Data Talk. We share out new episodes every single week, and you can find the full catalog of previous episodes as well as YouTube videos by going to the Experian news blog. The URL is just experian.com/datatalk. And as always, we love hearing from our community. So if you have any comments or suggestions for future shows, please reach out. You can find us on Twitter at Experian Data Lab, or you can always reach out to me directly. My email is michael.delgado@experian.com. Take care, and we'll chat next week.